Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today with the American Family Insurance DreamBank, where we believe in the transformative power of dreams. My name is Andy Frisky. I'm a senior dream curator here, tuning in for my lovely coworker, Madeline Martini, on behalf of our entire team. So thankful that all of you had joined us here today. And for those of you who aren't familiar, I would love to take a few moments and introduce you to DreamBank. So here at American Family Insurance, we believe that communities are stronger and the future is brighter when people are actively pursuing their dreams. And that's why DreamBank was created just over a decade ago. It's an inspirational community destination and digital experience that is dedicated to dreamers everywhere. Our offerings are designed to help you celebrate the dream journey, overcome obstacles, and to stay motivated. And I would like to go ahead and introduce our featured speaker today, Sarah Mayland. So Sarah is a women's health coach, educator, and speaker who is on a mission to empower women to love themselves and their bodies so that together we can empower the next generation of women to do the same. She's the owner of Inside Out Transformations, where she furthers that mission every day through individual and group coaching, comprehensive online courses, workshops, and presentations with clients, companies, and conferences all over the world. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Sarah. Sarah, take it away.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining today. I am going to go ahead and share my screen and we will begin. So our workshop today is called Self-Care or Treat Yourself: How to Leverage Both to Support Your Dreams. And before we dive in, I would just like to take a moment to introduce myself to you a little bit more. So that's me. Again, my name is Sarah Mayland, and it is my mission to empower women to love themselves and their bodies so that together we can empower the next generation of women to do the same. How I got to this place is I started in the world of clinical mental health counseling. And while I loved the work, I did not love the system in which the work existed. And I found myself wanting to spread out and do something completely different. And so after I had my son, I started working out with a group of moms and eventually became an instructor. And I am still a fitness instructor to this day. It's kind of my fun little side thing to do, and I love it. I love it. So I realized the women that I was working with, they wanted to bring about a lot of change in their lives and in their bodies, and exercise was just a little tiny piece of that. It was an important piece, is an important piece, I should say, but was just a tiny bit. And I realized through my own work that I had done in that regard that nutrition was a really essential piece of the puzzle as well. And I had experience working with dietitians before and decided to get a certification and become a fitness nutrition specialist, in addition to furthering my fitness education by becoming a certified personal trainer. I also realized that I loved working with moms. They are not the only group that I love working with, but one of them. And so I furthered my education in that regard and became a certified prenatal and postpartum specialist. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be cool if one day I could create a comprehensive practice that combines fitness and nutrition and mental health all into a holistic and integrative approach? And then I asked myself, why am I sitting around thinking this is cool? Let me just do it. And so I started my practice, Inside Out Transformations, back in 2019. And now my practice has evolved to a much larger focus on community. And that shows up in presentations like these, also a lot of corporate wellness work, groups on social media, and of course, coaching groups. I wanted to let you know that as we go through this talk today, you will see a couple of things on each slide. One is my contact info at the bottom. The other is a little QR code in the corner. And that QR code, if you are watching from your computer, you can take your phone and scan that QR code, and that will take you to the links of everything I do, my contact info, my website, all of it. So Let's dive into the meat of our presentation today. What are we going to learn? So what you're going to learn, first, we're going to clarify what is the difference between self-care and the idea of treat yourself, and why does that difference matter? Often, especially on social media, we see those two terms thrown around interchangeably, and they're actually quite different. And it's really important to understand the difference. And then once we understand that difference, we're going to explore what they look like, what they commonly look like in people's lives, what they might look like in your life. And we'll also consider how you can benefit from both self-care and from treating yourself. And then we're going to apply this information into concrete ways that can support you in your dreams, right? So a really strong belief that I have is that knowledge without application is useless. So I can sit here and share lots of information, but until you have a way to use that information, it's not going to do you much good. So we are going to learn how you can use self-care and treat yourself strategically to reinforce habits and to feel your best, because ultimately those things are what are going to empower you to fulfill your dreams. So self-care, let's define our terms. Self-care is positive action that helps you feel and function your best in the long term. That is a really important distinction, right? The things that help us feel and function our best in the long term, not right now. Treating yourself is action that helps you feel good right now in the moment. Let's dig into this a little bit more and learn more about the differences between self-care and treating yourself. So for self-care, self-care is actions that are always going to serve you. They are actions that are not going to do damage. As I said in the previous slide, they are going to help you feel and function at your best. Unfortunately, self-care is often made up of the things that we don't feel like doing. Self-care can be a little boring. It can be a bit of a drag sometimes, but ultimately it's what serves us even when we don't feel like it. Often with self-care, or I would say the vast majority of the time with self-care, there is also delayed gratification. It's not that instant hit of dopamine or endorphins that make us feel good right away. But again, it's about that long-term feeling and functioning our best. And finally, self-care is a habit. It's not something special that you do when you've burned yourself out so much that it becomes a requirement, right? It is something that we live and do day in and day out, ideally. Treat yourself sometimes doesn't serve you. Treat yourself is the actions that really feel good right now. And you have to be really careful with it, because sometimes the idea of treat yourself can actually do things that don't help you feel or function your best, and then actually make it harder for you to do what you need to do to fulfill your dreams, even if it feels good right now. And treat yourself is usually the stuff, or I would say always the stuff that you feel like doing, right? That's why it's a treat. You feel like it. And often treat yourself is something that is occasional. And we will talk about examples of treating yourself in a couple of slides. And looking at this list, right, it can kind of look like, oh, self-care is ideal and treat yourself is kind of a bad thing. And definitely treat yourself, the idea of treating yourself can sometimes not serve you, but it can be beneficial when you use it strategically. And we will talk more about that in a few minutes. So let's dig into self-care for a minute. What does self-care look like? The way that I think about self-care is it is comprised of 6 basic habits. So I'm going to share what those are. The first one is sleep. Sleep is the bedrock of self-care. If sleep falls apart, everything else tends to follow. Nourishment, right? Giving your body the fuel it needs in order to do what you want it to do is essential. It is really, really, really hard to take care of yourself if you are constantly running on fumes. It is hard to take the positive actions that you want to live your dreams if you're exhausted and if you're undernourished. Movement is another one. Your body loves to move. Your body is designed to move. And movement boosts your mood and improves your focus and your energy, all of which are really essential when you are working to build your dreams. Taking time to pause. The way I think about pausing is taking time to be mindful. So doing a mindfulness or meditation practice that is going to help give you the space that you need to remain calm, to not get swept up in difficult emotions. And it also helps you feel in control, and it helps you stay focused. Enjoyment. Enjoyment is a really essential part of self-care, and that can sometimes overlap with treat yourself. And it shows up as self-care when it is balanced in your life and it is something that is energizing you and enriching you and serving you, not depleting you. And enjoyment is finding time, even a few minutes a day, for something that you like to do, something that is optional. And that may be cooking a healthy meal or exercising, right? But it may also be, I love to knit. So for me, it might be sitting down and knitting a few rows of whatever project I happen to be working on. But the enjoyment piece of self-care helps to keep you feeling happy and fulfilled. I don't want to speak for everyone, but I know I have certainly been in places, especially as I have been growing my business, where I am so focused on what has to get done to make this grow that I forget to enjoy myself. And this thing that I love, this practice, there's been times where it has started to feel draining or feel like a burden. And when I consciously make time for enjoyment, I find that it also makes my work more rewarding because I have that balance and that separation. And then finally, meaningful connection. This is a really essential part of self-care. As humans, we are evolved to function in community. We are supposed to be together with people. And so when you find meaningful connection with others, that ensures that you have the support system that you need to thrive. With meaningful connection, there are a couple of things to consider. Number one is, what is the level of connection that is right for you? If you are an introvert like me, it could be that the level of connection you really enjoy is one-on-one work. Or you can be in a group for a while, but then you need some time to step back and recharge. Number two is considering, are the people that you are spending your time with energizing you or draining you? And part of self-care is really making sure that connection stays meaningful by setting healthy boundaries around your time and around your energy to make sure that the people that you're spending your time with are people that are supporting you, that are lifting you up, that are lighting you up, and conversely, that you are able to support and light up as well. So these are some self-care, these are the self-care habits, I would say. I would love for you to take a minute before we move on, looking at these self-care habits, share in the chat or write down in your notes or both how can practicing regular self-care be beneficial? And I'm just going to take maybe a minute or so, put whatever is in your head on paper or into the chat. And I would love to see what benefits you can see from self-care.
I think the sorry, I think the chat is disabled for this one. However, the Q&A is open. So even
Okay.
though it's not a question, if you felt compelled to type your responses that way, Sarah and myself should be able to see those replies if you felt compelled to today. So yeah.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, Andy. It would help your mood. I love that. Yes, Angelique. Any other ideas on the benefits of regular self-care? I think helping mood is really, really essential, because when our mood is depressed, right? When we're feeling depressed or we're feeling anxious, we don't have as much bandwidth to be able to do whatever it is that we want to do. Some other benefits that can come up are having more energy. Again, the bandwidth to do what you need to do. We have emotional bandwidth, and we also have physical bandwidth and mental bandwidth. And so doing things like getting enough sleep, nourishing your body, moving your body, give you more physical energy, right? That is going to give you more bandwidth to do what you need to do without tiring. And then things like taking time to pause for mindfulness, and also nourishment, movement, enjoyment, all of that also help give you mental bandwidth. And so it makes it easier to do whatever it is you need to do. If you think about sleep, for instance, if any of you have ever been around small children, what happens to them when they don't get enough sleep, right? They stay up too late, they're tired. Any little tiny thing will set them off, and it becomes these big, giant emotions. And that's what happens to us as adults too. We can like put the filter on and it doesn't show up as a temper tantrum, hopefully, but we have a much shorter fuse when we do not look after our self-care. So let's dive in now to the idea of treat yourself. What does treat yourself look like? These are just some examples I'm going to share of ways that I have seen treat yourself show up for people. This is not by any means an exhaustive list, but it might be something like staying up late for me time. If you are working really hard all day, if you have a lot of obligations, you get the kids to bed, you get the work done, and it's like, oh my God, I just want some time to unwind and have some me time. Sometimes it can be self-care. It can also be treat yourself if it's something kind of rare and special, or if it starts to maybe not so positively impact the self-care. Another example of treat yourself may be wine and Netflix. This is a common one that I see. And this is a really common one where people say, oh, I'm staying up late and having my glass of wine and Netflix because self-care. And this is definitely a treat yourself, because think about this. If you are exhausted, if you are overwhelmed, if you are like, I just want this time to myself to have a glass of wine and watch Netflix, what's going to be the best thing to do if you are exhausted and overwhelmed? It's going to be to go to sleep, right? So that you can have the energy that you need for the next day to do what you need to do. And so often when we get into this habit of thinking about things like this that are certainly enjoyable, but thinking about them as self-care, what happens is that we end up continuing to burn the candle in a way that is not serving us, right? And so you're staying up late, you're drinking your wine, you're doing your Netflix, and then you wake up the next morning behind the 8 ball because you overslept, because you were up so late. Now your whole day feels like chaos, and it's the same exhaustion. It's the same loop. So be mindful of that. Another thing that could be considered treat yourself is retail therapy, spa days, maybe unhealthy foods are another treat yourself. And so these things can be great and fun and indulgent, right? That's what treat yourself is really about, is indulging. But we want to make sure that we are going about it beneficially strategically, right? So before we move on, I want to think about what might be some of the benefits of treat yourself. And I'm going to invite you to put an answer in the Q&A. Once again, we'll take a minute for that. Don't all jump up at once. So treat yourself can be really beneficial for feeling good. Like, you want to feel good in the moment. It's a really great way to reward yourself for something. It is a great way to give yourself a little boost right there in the moment. We just want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that is strategic. So let's move on to that. How do you care for and treat yourself strategically? Let's start with self-care. So for self-care, the way that you want to be strategic about self-care and approach self-care is you want to make it a daily habit, right? Things like making sure you get to bed at a reasonable hour, making sure that you're nourishing your body, moving your body. Take 5 minutes a day for mindfulness. Take a few minutes a day to do something that you enjoy. Take a few minutes a day to connect with someone that you value. You want to make self-care a daily habit, and you want to make it non-negotiable. So often we take self-care and we put it at the end of the list after everything that we have to do for everyone else. And then if something has to fall off the list because we don't have enough time or energy, the first thing to go is self-care. What we need to do is actually make it non-negotiable, put it at the top of the list, because feeling and functioning our best is going to help us do what we need to do with greater impact. And for those of us where it's really important to be doing for others, it's going to help us and enable us to do that more effectively as well. And then you also want to prioritize it, as I said, and practice it liberally. Lots of self-care. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to toss this thing in here when I can get to it. With treat yourself, use it as a celebration for something. Use it as a reward. So often when we accomplish something, we don't take time to acknowledge what we've accomplished, and we don't take time to celebrate our accomplishments. And treat yourself is a really great way to do that. You want to make sure that, number one, it doesn't replace self-care. So use it sparingly and judiciously, right? If you are treating yourself every day, it's no longer a treat, it's a habit. And so we want to keep treat yourself to a treat. The other thing I would say is be careful that ingestible things are not rewards. So food, alcohol, things like that. Those are not great rewards because it can build a dependency cycle. So, it may be just something that is worked into the general balance. And then the way that you can implement this, right? It's okay, we know that we need to be strategic about this. How do we actually implement these strategies? We need to create systems to make it as easy on yourself as possible to practice self-care and to treat yourself effectively. So, number one, prioritize yourself, right? And this is really about the self-care piece of this. Block self-care time before you block other obligations on your schedule. I don't know about you, but I am one of those people where if it is not on my calendar, it does not happen. So I actually schedule things like a snack or lunch or my workout. I even schedule bedtime. So, and I schedule meditation time. So put it on the schedule. And then, as I said before, especially around meaningful connection, set healthy boundaries around your time and your energy. So think about what you value, what you want for yourself, and make sure that your energy is directed to those things. Now, about rewarding yourself, this is kind of where we're working in treat yourself, is create a reward system for behaviors, not for outcomes, right? So the way that might look is if you are working on a really big project for work, instead of just rewarding yourself when it's done, maybe you're setting an intention to work on it for 2 hours every day. If you meet your 2 hours every day for a week, let's say, reward yourself for that, because what that's going to do is it's going to keep you motivated to do the thing that is hard to do. If you only reward outcomes, what happens when that outcome is done? As I mentioned in the last slide, avoid using anything ingestible as a reward. And then also make time to celebrate yourself. Be very intentional about it. It's not arrogant. It's not egotistical. Your brain wants more of what feels good, right? And so if you are taking time to reward and celebrate you being aligned with your intentions, your brain is going to want more of that celebration. And then finally, make it easy on yourself. So a lot of people think, oh, I see these 6 self-care habits and I'm kind of not up to where I want to be on all of them. So I'm going to do all the things and completely overhaul my schedule and change everything in one shot. That's not sustainable. And it might last for like a week or so, and then it falls off, and then you feel kind of crappy. So what I would say is take one small step at a time. Maybe try going to bed half an hour earlier. And then once you have that in place, work on nourishment. Plan ahead to eliminate in the moment decisions. The more decisions you have to make in the moment, the less bandwidth you have. And so if you can say, okay, hey, I already know that I'm going to the gym at 5 p.m. Don't wait till 5 p.m. and then be like, oh, what am I doing? Because your brain is going to want to do what is the easiest thing to do, not what is the best thing to do. So plan ahead to eliminate those in the moment decisions. Build self-care into your routine, right? So attach it to another habit, something like the gym. Okay, I'm going to go to the gym after I drop my kids off at school or after I leave work. And that way, if the time shifts a little bit, it's still attached to another event that is already a habit and is already happening. And finally, reward your habits. Again, not the outcomes, but the habits. So I am aware that we are coming to the end of our time. I want to share a little bit about how you can work with me if you desire. So I offer a few different things. One of them is individual coaching. I also have a coaching group. It's a year-long group coaching program called Love Your Body from the Inside Out. I have a stress management online course with both self-paced and guided group options that is called Conquer Stress from the Inside Out. I have a small group that meets bi-weekly called the Healthy Habits Society, and that is a great place to get the support of other people and brainstorm as you try to build healthy habits into your life. And then there is also the Inside Out Transformations community on Facebook, which is a free and public group. And I invite you to join. It's where I share a lot of wellness information and recipes. I feature other practitioners in Friday live conversations. And so I invite you to be a part of that. And with that, I want to thank you for being here today. And I would love to welcome any questions that you have. You can put them up in the Q&A.
Thanks so much, Sarah, for that. And yes, as people are typing away their questions, I thought I might kick things off. As someone who's in their early 30s, approaching their mid 30s, the idea of self-care, or more so not burning the candle on both ends, is a little bit more top of mind for me now. I know, Sarah, you and I were able to connect prior to this, and I mentioned I have a 2-year-old son, so certainly that sort of activities has made me a bit more responsible than in my 20s and whatnot. But my question for you is something that I'm struggling with, is that at times it's hard for me to distinguish between self-care and treat yourself, right? I know you gave good examples of what those are and kind of when maybe they should be utilized. But more so, how do you handle the negative talk or the self-doubt? It's like, why not? Why shouldn't I just go get some ice cream? Why shouldn't I do this, even though that maybe stretching or going to bed early or something else is equally on the table and is enjoyable, but obviously it's not as fun as, eating ice cream.
Right. And that is a great question. And thank you for asking that. So number one, how do you tell the difference? I think you can do a gut check on yourself to tell whether it's self-care or treat yourself. Is think about the thing that you are thinking about doing. Do you feel like doing it? Is it a thing that you really, really feel like doing right now? Or is it something that's in the back of your head, like, I should probably do this? If it's an I should probably do this, it's more likely going to fall into the realm of self-care. If it's I want to do this now because it's fun, it's probably going to fall more into the camp of treat yourself. And again, there's nothing wrong with treating yourself. And so if you are in a place where I would say it's not going to detract from your self-care, go do it and enjoy it. So for example, you mentioned getting the ice cream, right? If the ice cream is going to do other things, like let's say, you know that you really need to exercise to keep your energy up, but you're like, I'm going to skip the gym and go to ice cream. That would kind of detract from self-care. Or if you're like, you know what, I'm going to stay up really late and eat ice cream, that's going to detract from self-care of sleep. But if it's worked in there in a balance, like, hey, this is just something fun I want to do on a Saturday afternoon, and it's not going to harm anything else that's serving you, go for it.
So it sounds like pausing, having that self-aware moment, and not trying to rationalize with yourself, but asking that question and being as honest as possible.
Yep. Being as honest as possible and trusting your gut, right? If your intuition is saying to you, you should probably do this, you're going to feel better if you do it.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you for that. That was helpful.
Sure.
It looks like that there weren't any other questions that came in, so we'll wrap things up. But Sarah, one thing that we at DreamBank always like to ask our presenters, just because we are a community that is built up of fellow fearless dreamers, what's one piece of advice you have for someone who's actively pursuing a dream right now?
I love that question. It would be to ignore what everyone else is telling you that you should be doing. Listen to your gut, check your values, and act in a way that is aligned with your values.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. Thank you so much. Thank you all who tuned in today to join us, Sarah. Thank you so much, Sarah, for putting together this presentation. This will be up on our YouTube page roughly a week after today, so keep an eye out for there in case you wanted to go back and reference or share it with someone else who might not able to tune in live. But we will go ahead and cap it there. Thank you all, and we will see you all next time. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.